always show up for a job interview as if you've already got the job. Hi, my name is Gillian Anderson, and today I am here for Harper's Bazaar to talk to you about getting into character. On the one hand, it's easy almost to play a real character because there's often so much documentation, and so it makes it easier to do research or to hone in on things like clothes and voice and etc., which can all help in building a character. But then there's also the added pressure of people who have very strong opinions of the person that you're playing, whether it's family or people that they worked with, who will of course have a lot to say about whether you've got your interpretation right or not. So there's always added pressure with that. With fictional characters, making up the history can be very helpful, but you are sometimes starting entirely from scratch. If even their personality, if it's not quite so clear in the text itself, then that's all part of the work that one has to do as an actor in terms of developing, the detail and the specificity of what makes that particular individual different from, say, someone else that you've played, or unique in some way. Research helps a lot, especially if it's an historical character, particularly because I recently played Margaret Thatcher. It really helped to go back into her childhood and to look into how she essentially became not just the woman that she was, but the Prime Minister that she was. And her background, her childhood really kind of says everything about how she ran the country. Mother was a stay-at-home mom, but really managed the books frugally. They were Methodists, and that certainly had a big impact on how she both budgeted the country and what a hard worker she was, and how she very much believed in putting the individual first before you help somebody else. And so her father was an alderman, but she also grew up above their family shop, so she worked in the shop and saw both of her parents working really, really hard. And she later in life and throughout most of her life became a notorious hard worker, sleeping 3 hours a night and never taking a holiday. She and her husband Dennis didn't like holidays, or if he went off by himself without her. And so all of those details can help to really influence how one understands a character and how one ultimately, I think, plays a character. So that has helped me a lot over the years. She had such a distinctive voice that it became, on the one hand, imperative that I find a voice as close to hers as possible. But on the other hand, to find one that felt like I still existed in it somewhere, that it wasn't just a parody of Margaret Thatcher. But then with other voices, for instance, they show up at some point. I'll speak from my own experience. They show up at some point in my head. And with something like, I think, Great Expectations, I spoke in a very high, childlike pitch. I think part of that decision was because she was stuck. When she was abandoned at the altar, she was ultimately kind of stuck as a very young woman. And since that point, she hadn't left the house, and she'd been staying in her wedding dress from that moment on. And so it kind of felt that her whole system, her whole way of being was potentially stuck in that trauma, which might have had an impact on her voice. And so, but sometimes I think I feel a voice inside my head, and there's a big difference between feeling and understanding how they sound and actually you manifesting that into the actual voice when you open your mouth and you start talking. So it's important to marry the two things, you know, to actually speak it out loud, perhaps before you get onto set, so that you can make sure that you know how to turn a thought into the other, which is the action. And I've sometimes left that a bit too late. If I feel very comfortable with the character, then I don't mind, chatting between takes and goofing around. But then if it's either a particularly challenging character, further from me, or if there's a lot of dialogue in any given day, I'll definitely find a quiet corner somewhere to sit and focus. When we were doing The Crown, whenever I would find a place, I'd take a chair and put it in a room somewhere, in some dark, dusty corner or in an abandoned room or something. And we always referred to it as my elsewhere, that if the director wanted to talk to me, he'd have to come to my elsewhere to find me, or that, if they needed to find me to come to set or something. So I'm quite fond of an elsewhere, and I highly recommend it. One of the characters that I've enjoyed playing the most was Blanche Dubois in Streetcar Named Desire. Other than being, an active alcoholic, she has probably a bigger personality than any other character I've played. So extroverted and so loud and so sassy and southern, and on many fronts I felt like she was a far reach from me, but also it's quite fun to play a character like that because you can completely let loose and give every element of the parts that, of yourself that you don't normally reveal or let go to that character, which can be quite fun. So she was definitely a blast to play. I have found over the many decades that I've been in the business that hair, makeup, wardrobe is as important as the lines are, in a way, in terms of getting into character, especially Margaret Thatcher in The Crown. And she is known so much for her voice, for her, what they call pussy bows, for her hair. Her hairstyles were as much a part of her look, her personality almost, as anything else. And so working on that with hair, makeup, wardrobe from the very beginning, and then finding the right look and using those outfits, using the wig, using the handbag. She had a handbag on her arm the whole time. Particular kinds of shoes that she would wear, which I would never wear, but somehow in slipping into them, they feel like you're slipping into her shoes, and it makes it easier to find your balance. I guess the best piece of advice that I ever got was from a fellow student at the college that I went to. She said, always show up for a job interview, and so for an audition, I guess, as if you've already got the job. With enough self-belief, self-confidence. I think that helped at the time, because I had a tendency to kind of show up scruffy and always prepared. But I think going in with a certain sense of self-containment and focus, I think it was pretty good advice, I'd say.